Hey everybody, welcome to At the Table, and this evening we have opened up this for the public, and so if there's anybody out there watching on Facebook and you wish to come to City Hall, you can join us. We have a few that have joined us this evening. Tonight we're going to be talking for the third time about charter revisions that are going to be on tomorrow's ballot. Remember to go vote tomorrow, not only for your council member but also for these charter items. But tonight we have David Davis, who was our city attorney for 46 years and recently retired and still does a little bit of help for us in regards to some legal work that we have going on right now. And so David's been around for a long time, and we wanted to pick his brain and hear from him. But before we get started, we were talking right before we started here, and you had mentioned that there are some people that may not know even what the charter is or how important our city charter is. Could you explain about the charter?
Sure. I think it is important to know what a charter is and why we have a charter. Actually, cities have constitutional rights, and one of the constitutional rights a city has is when you achieve a population of 2,000 people, the citizens can adopt a charter. And that opens the question of what is a charter. The best analogy to a charter would be the Oklahoma Constitution. It's the fundamental law of the city that under which all of the rules and regulations that the city council adopts have to conform with the charter. The charter can only be changed by a vote of the people. The city council cannot adopt an ordinance that is contrary to or in violation of the charter. Now, the charter is not a blank check for a city in that the city can adopt rules different than state law insofar as matters of local concern are present. What are matters of local concern? There have been books and books full of litigation over that since the beginning, but generally speaking, the number of council members, that's a local matter. The times of your election, that's a local matter. The way you select your mayor, that's a local matter. All of the items that are on the ballot this time are matters of local concern that the city charter can vary from the terms of state law. If a municipality, whether it's a city or a town, if they do not have a charter, state law dictates how they have to do everything, and they can't vary from those rules. So the flexibility that the charter gives is to alter some of the mandated state rules. And frankly, many times the state law has adopted rules that Bethany did not agree with, and consequently you see in several instances Bethany's rules differ from the general rules that are applicable to cities without charters. It is a valuable document in terms of Bethany's organization. The original charter was done, I believe, in 1954. Things have changed a lot since 1954, but really the charter hasn't changed that many times since 1954. I believe there have been 3, maybe 4 amendments to the charter since 1954. And some of the things that are on the ballot for tomorrow night concern one of those amendments. But the fundamental law of Bethany is established by the charter, and it is a valuable tool. Do you want to talk about now about the individual items? What's your preference?
Yeah, I believe I have these in the order that they will be listed on the ballot, and the first one is the city attorney, and the second is the city manager, third is the density, and fourth is the judge, and fifth are the term limits. And so let's talk about the attorney.
Okay. I was appointed city attorney in 1972, and even at that time, which was a long time ago, there were a lot of attorneys living in Bethany at that time. Since that time, there aren't so many attorneys living in Bethany. And frankly, when I made a decision that I was ready to move on, I kind of did my own search trying to find someone that I felt would be a good fit for the attorney position, and I didn't have any luck with that. You know, obviously there are two sides to that issue. One side being that to have the requirement for residency in the charter restricts the number of people that could be there. That means you've either got to find someone who already lives here or someone who's willing to move here. And attorneys that have years of experience probably have an established residence somewhere, and that's not to say they wouldn't move here, but that's, you know, another hurdle to cross. The other side of the coin is you could say, well, by having an attorney who lives here, he would have some skin in the game, so to speak, and some personal interest in what's going on. But I don't think that's as important for the attorney, because the attorney really should be a neutral for the city, and basically calling the questions that come up in terms of what the law is, and not really taking sides and that sort of thing. And that was always the position I took. So that's kind of it. Oklahoma City has a requirement that their attorney live in the city, but of course when you think of the breadth of Oklahoma City, that's a totally different situation. A lot of the smaller communities have gotten away from attorney residency requirements simply for the same reason that we just discussed. And might as well talk about the judge position as well. The issues are exactly the same there. The judge position doesn't take the amount of time that the attorney position does, but still it does limit you to a certain number of people that would be interested in the position. And even now, with the judge we currently have living in Bethany, when she's not available or has a conflict of interest, there's a list of alternate judges that she can select to sit in her place. And I don't think any of those people live in Bethany, just simply because she's picked people who have experience in municipal judgeship. So kind of the same. I really don't see a lot of difference philosophically or politically between those two issues. It is certainly a choice for the citizens to make, but I will say when I was looking to try to come up with a recommendation for my replacement, I certainly didn't have any luck with that. So,
as far as like the attorney, a city could hire a law firm that has municipal experience as far as attorneys, but you wouldn't just be like we've had you. Ultimately Bethany could have maybe contract with a law firm, and there may be multiple people within that law firm that have expertise in different areas that we would be able to gain from, but they're not living in Bethany, obviously. And so opening up just the city attorney thing as far as residency requirement seems like we're handcuffing ourselves, making them live in Bethany, because we wouldn't be able to have a firm. So we could do something like that.
Certainly in Oklahoma City there are dozens, if not more, large law firms that have expertise in many areas. But frankly, when I first became city attorney of Bethany, life was pretty simple. Things have changed a lot in the law since 1972. The law in general is more complex than it's ever been. Those of you who just read the newspaper know that there's a lawsuit almost in every between every word of every sentence, really. So you'll find that regardless of who you hire, there are probably even going to be circumstances for the city where even that group won't be able to handle some particular thing. An example is the city's currently working on a tax increment finance district. There are only 2 or 3 lawyers in Oklahoma City that really have much expertise in that area. Mm-hmm. So regardless of who you hire, it's likely that there will be times when you'll be hiring experts in some other field. For instance, the litigation we have currently going on the water pollution, we had to actually go out of state to find what typically is referred to as a mass tort law firm who handles large lawsuits regarding toxic chemicals in drinking water. So there'll always be examples where whoever you hire won't be able to handle everything that comes down the pike.
Right. Let's talk about the city manager, because it's the same scenario in regards to the residency requirement for our city manager. That's number 2. That'll be number 2 on the ballot. What are your thoughts there? Because it's different than the attorney and the judge as far as position within the city, but these are the three positions that the city council oversees in regards to the hiring of these positions. And so, my thoughts are the same with the city manager personally as they are with the attorney and the judge, that why would we want to handcuff ourselves or cause us to have to pick from a smaller pond than we could otherwise? Other people argue, and I get their side of the argument, and I don't necessarily disagree with it, that we want our city manager to live within the city and have skin in the game. But if there's somebody that lives just outside the city limits, the state statute says that they can live within a 10-mile radius of the city limits. And so that may be somebody that's just built a home or really likes their home, and they'd be the top pick for our city manager, but yet they were living close to the city, not within the city limits, is the state statute.
Well, let me say this. I really don't have as much insight into that as I do the judge and the attorney, but in my mind, I think that's a philosophical question of how valuable it is for the city manager to be a resident of Bethany. Obviously, the points that we just made about the judge and the attorney make, you could make the same reference there, but historically, communities have required city managers to live in the community, as opposed to most of the smaller communities have not required the judge and the attorney. So on the city manager position, I don't really have any input into that, other than I think the citizens need to just cast their vote and speak their mind and their heart, really, on that.
The other item being the density. It'll actually be number 3 on the ballot.
That's probably the most complicated issue on the ballot. And let me see if I can simplify that. In 1972, when I started with the city, apartments were a hot topic in Bethany. The city council turned over its membership over the apartment house issue. There was a group that was elected that were anti-apartment, and there were quite a few large vacant tracts of land in Bethany at the time. Give you an example, where Brownsville is now, the owner of that property wanted to build apartments there. where Pine Ridge is, which is 30th and Council. The owner of that property wanted to build apartments there, and there was another property on 16th Street that they wanted to build apartments on, and at least two of those ended up in court with the city turning down the application for apartments. And there was something of a mistrust by some of the citizens of the city council because they had approved quite a few apartment houses in the 70, 71 time frame. And the citizens came forward with the idea that there should be something put in the charter that would state that there could never be more than 12 units per acre built in Bethany. And 12 units per acre, if you break that down, that would be probably the equivalent to a triplex. Be like, possibly, well, single family residential is about 4 units per acre, so it'd be 3 times that, basically, is what you're talking about. That passed overwhelmingly. That was challenged in court. It went to the Oklahoma Supreme Court, and they upheld that restriction. And that was on the books for quite a while, and then there was a study done of the downtown Bethany area, and the study indicated that in order for downtown Bethany to be viable, that there needed to be housing in the downtown area. So, and an amendment was made to the charter at that time and submitted to the people and passed, which allowed density greater than 12 units per acre in the central business district and in dormitories for the university. And without that change, Southern Plaza across the street wouldn't have been possible. So that was the last change to that provision. What I think has happened over time, and this isn't any secret to anybody, a lot of the apartment houses in Bethany have deteriorated or dilapidated, and aren't prime places for residents. And under the law, all of those units that exceed 12 units per acre are now what under the law they call non-conforming uses, which means that they were legal at the time they were built, but they're illegal under the current code. And what that does, that to a lender or to a buyer of those facilities, they realize that if there was some destruction of those properties, or if they tore them down, they wouldn't be able to rebuild them like they were. So consequently, that discourages new investment in those facilities. So what the changes that are proposed here are, and there really are two. One is that the current charter says you can't alter or make alterations to a facility that has more than 12 units per acre. The word alteration is being removed, and that would allow then the remodeling, let's say, or the rehabilitation of some of the less than stellar apartment units around town. That's a significant change for the reason I just described. The other portion of it allows the city council to approve development greater than 12 units per acre so long as it's part of a planned unit development. And what that means is that in order to develop something greater than 12 units per acre, the developer has to come in and negotiate the site plan with the city council and the planning commission and provide certain amenities as part of that, and all of that is regulated by the ordinances. It's not just a blank check that would allow someone to come in and build another, well, I don't want to mention any names, but most of you know the places I'm talking about. And part of the motivation for that came from the comprehensive plan, and those of you who have looked at the comprehensive plan state that Bethany needs housing for younger residents, and younger residents bring money into the city to spend, and they also have to have housing, and they don't necessarily want to live in the same kind of house their grandmother and their mother lived in. So the idea was that in the comprehensive plan that there could be some townhomes or garden homes or something similar to what you see developing all over the area around downtown Oklahoma City. Various types of facilities that are sold or even leased, but with amenities that go with them that attract the younger people. That was a big part of the comprehensive plan, was that that's what Bethany needs, because there's no suitable housing in Bethany that's attractive to bring in younger residents. That was the gist of the comprehensive plan. And that's that issue in a nutshell. I'm sure some people won't change their mind about that. I would suggest, though, that anyone who's uncertain of that, try to look at the comprehensive plan for Bethany and see how that is part of a long-term plan that Bethany needs to develop its tax base, because people my age and Mr. Carlson's age aren't going to be the ones spending all the money in Bethany, and unfortunately a lot of the people who could and would live here are living north, because that's where the younger people are going, that's where the money's being spent. So this was the way the comprehensive plan sought to bring some of that growth back into Bethany. And there are many areas in Bethany where that could work. As far as having a 20 or 30 acre apartment complex built in Bethany, I mean, if you just drive around town, you'll see that's really not feasible.
Right.
There's not anything like that left. Property's too valuable, it is left, and consequently, the idea of the planned unit development was that the city council could regulate the type of activity that went in and get something that would appeal to the younger group and benefit the city in long term.
And the comprehensive plan can be found on the website, city website, if somebody is wanting to know exactly what does that document show.
The only thing I might add to what I said, planned unit development is a tool that's used nationwide, and the difference between planned unit development and just a straight rezoning for apartments is that the city council and the planning commission have a lot of control over what a planned unit development looks like. Whereas if you just had property zoned for apartments, they come in and look at the books and they follow the rules, they can build whatever they want to. The city council and the planning commission would have the authority to require open space, recreation areas, landscaping, all sorts of things. So that's primarily the difference there.
The last thing on the charter revisions are term limits. That there would be term limits for the mayor and the city council members of 12, no more than 12 years. Then they would have to set out at least 2 years before they could run again. And again, that's an individual's preference.
Right.
A lot of it their vote may be determined based off if they like who's sitting up here at the moment. So, and I'm for term limits, quite honestly, because I hope that if this is something that the citizens vote to change in our charter, then, and again, all of these are a vote of the people, obviously, and it's what the majority of our citizens that are going to show up tomorrow and vote, what they would like to see happen. But as far as term limits, I would hope that it would force the current seated council and mayor to be more proactive in trying to mentor other people or the next generation to hopefully be able to pass the torch to one day, because it is going to happen at some point in time, and this may be a very good idea. I know what I believe personally. I believe that if we want things to change in our city, then there's some things that we're going to have to change, and that's why the council, after the charter review committee put a list of things together, and we got together and met, and the majority of the council felt like these were the 5 items that were most important for this time, and we wanted the people to have a voice and a vote as to if this is something that they would want to see changed in these items.
The city council referred the charter amendment idea to a committee, and there was a gentleman on the committee, Dr. Farmer, who I believe wrote a book about term limits, and he had a lot of input into it and a lot of background, and some of it was kind of eye-opening to me, but the reality is there are term limits in the presidency. There are term limits out at the State House here. And obviously there are 2 sides to it. You can think, if somebody's been here a long time, they must know a lot. But on the other hand, you could say, well, maybe every once in a while you need to have some new ideas. So, it is, there are 2 sides to it, but I think the recommendation of the committee, as you see it here, really, it wasn't like 1 term or 2 terms. It was 12 years was the limit, and then you could come back after you'd been off 2. I wouldn't think that would discourage people from running again. The theory, I guess, and the reality is, and anybody who's been on a city council or any other, even a planning commission or board of adjustment or any other school board, anything like that, they know that it takes a year or 2 to have dealt with most of the things that you're going to be dealing with. For instance, when you're on the city council, the way the election schedule works, immediately after you take office as a new council member, you're facing the budget adoption, and if you're a new council member, that's all green to you. You don't know really very much at that time. Now the next year you'll have been through that cycle once, and you'll have some understanding of what's going on, but obviously there's some merit to people serving for some extended period of time. But of course the other side of the coin is maybe government gets stale if people serve too long, and that's kind of the both sides of it. But I think the committee came up with a good recommendation for how to deal with term limits. Obviously if they'd have said 2 term limits, that would have been different than the 3, I think, because that certainly gives someone plenty of time to accomplish their objectives. And currently there's not anyone on the city council that anywhere close to that, so it doesn't really have any effect on anybody that's there now for at least 12 years. So
I believe Vice Mayor Knapp is the senior member at this point. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And how many years is that?
6.
6 years.
let's see, this doesn't start till 2020, so it'll only be for the first ones it'll deal with will be the people who are elected in 2021. And then they can serve 12 years, be off 2, and serve another 12 if
Yeah.
Really, it's a function of the voters. I mean, if the voters think that somebody's doing a good job, they'll put them in for 3 terms. If they don't,
Yeah.
they'll turn them out after 1, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah.
So, that it's sort of a self-regulating process.
Right. We've got a huge crowd with us this evening, as this is the 3rd time we've talked charter revisions, but we definitely wanted to end it with you because you've been here, you know more about the charter than most of us, and definitely those of us who are sitting on the horseshoe at this time, and get your insight because you were a part of helping formulate, some of the wording of how these things are listed and worded that they'll be voting on tomorrow. But is there anybody in here that has any questions? We do have a microphone I can hand you if somebody has any questions for Mr. Davis. He's done a very good job of explaining it all, as it is. I will announce, while I have the time, before I forget, some things that are coming up. On March 7th, we'll be having another one of our mayor's Bethany breakfast, and that is going to be at the Holiday Inn Express, 39th and Council area. And on March 12th, we will have another one of these at the table that we're going to do the 2nd Tuesday of every month. And we have a special guest that is confirmed to join us on that one, and that is Lieutenant Governor Matt Pinnell will be our guest for that. And on the at the tables, after tonight, from here on out, we are changing the location where you're going to be able to view those, and that will be on the mayor's page, Facebook page. And so there's some things that'll be changing. Our city Facebook page gets loaded down and overwhelmed with events and whatnot. So you can be like that page and follow that page, and you'll be up to speed of when those things happen. Also, I'd like to say that tomorrow is election, and we have not just these 5 items. We have 3 different wards that will be voting for new council members. Ward 1, Ward 2, and Ward 4 have actual council races going on. Ward 3, the council member did not draw an opponent, and so they have not had to campaign or have an election. However, if you live in Ward 3, that doesn't mean you don't have to go vote, because you need to go vote on these charter revisions. And so everybody has a reason to get up and go vote and let your voice be heard, because these council members and these charter items, if they are to change or not, needs to come from the people, the voice of the people, and let your voice be known as to what you want changed, who you want sitting on the horseshoe, and hopefully we can continue to make forward progress as we've been trying to do, as everybody always tries to do, because there's different seasons for different things. There's a time where money was a major issue, as it always is, quite honestly, but there was a time where that was a very serious matter, and the goal was to save as much money as possible. And there are other times where we need to make forward progress with different things like sidewalks and streets and things of that nature, and sometimes you gotta spend money. But I think we're in a very good place as a city, and we're making that forward progress. But again, it's all about the vote and the voice of the people. So please get out and vote tomorrow in these elections. Is there anybody, one last time before we close it up for the night and end this conversation of charter revisions? I am looking very much forward to getting this behind us so we can quit talking charter change items and get on with business. But I appreciate, Mr. Davis, you coming
Sure.
and educating us and the people, and thank you for being a part of everything we're doing and all that you've given the city for 46 years, and then continuing to do so by showing up here and explaining stuff to
Sure,
us.
glad to.
You guys have a great evening. You have a question?
I do have a question.
Do you want this microphone?
Sure. Since I can you hear me? There are some cities around the country where some of the suburbs that are individual municipalities, where there is some overlap in and this is related to the first issue, the residency requirements for the attorney and the judge, where there is some overlap in the attorneys and judges for these different municipalities, where the city attorney for one city might be the judge in the next city and things of that nature. And that has been shown to cause some problems. I'm sure you have some familiarity with other people who are in positions like that around here. Do we have any kind of overlap of that in any of the municipalities around in this area, or are they all pretty much completely separate people?
No, I'm familiar with cities that have where 3 cities have the same judge, for instance. And I can't put my finger on where it is, but I know there is at least one city where the city attorney serves as judge in another city. So we've never had that here, but certainly that does happen. And I guess I was anticipating a different question. I thought you were going to say, would it be possible for 2 cities to share an attorney? But that's probably not very likely, because cities have personalities just like families do, and you would obviously have conflicts there. Bethany and War Acres for almost 40 years have operated a sewer treatment plant jointly. But one of the reasons why that works is that every year the control shifts of the organization, so that one year Bethany has control, the next year War Acres has control. So in a sense, that's a damper on either side taking advantage of the other. And the probably that's not very likely that you would have more than one city sharing the same attorney. At least not adjoining cities where they might have similar interests.
Anybody else? Again, please go vote, exercise your right to vote, and let your voice be heard, and let's continue to take Bethany into our greatest days ever and continue to move forward. You guys have a blessed evening, and we will see you soon. Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Sure, thank you.